Let's talk about one of our other lead stories today, and this is about fake news. Facebook has been heavily criticised over its handling of fake news. This all forms part of a major report by MPs, which has called for an independent regulator to start policing social media companies and create a new compulsory code of ethics. We're here to talk it over. In the studio with me have cybersecurity expert John Sapanis. John,
Hello.
Good morning
to
you. It's interesting, this report from MPs, 18 months in the making. They've gone in quite hard on Facebook, saying they deliberately broke privacy and competition laws, and they've called their execs digital gangsters.
Yeah, it's for an early Monday morning read, it was fairly terrifying. Yeah. What we've learned is that UK citizens have little to no say in creating the rules of our information network and thus our digital democracy. The people that do have a say are unaccountable American tech companies and enemy authoritarian regimes who are able to exploit vulnerabilities in the Facebook platform to deliver micro-targeted disinformation to influence elections globally. That is a national security crisis, and the report outlines in details how that has came to be.
Self-policing then, clearly not working, not just with Facebook, but with other social media companies. And you see this as a real concern because this is where so many people get their news from. And the way that these social media companies work, we always talk about the algorithms, and the more you click on a news link you like, the more it's catered to what you like. So it's not just fake news, it's all about the news that is out there, and it's being tailored for you, for your views, so you don't see anything else.
Yeah, I think that was the big political revelation about the Cambridge Analytica scandal, which is the ability for unaccountable third-party digital agencies to scrape your personal information from your social media profiles, to create incredibly accurate psychological profiles of you, and then to micro-target you with specific pieces of political messaging that they know will influence you based off your interest. The case with Facebook, and when we talk about these foreign powers, is it's a classic case of power asymmetry and the need to regulate because the electoral laws in this country and the regulators themselves are poorly funded, and they do not have the powers needed to take on a $500 billion American tech company and oligarchs that have billions of dollars in their pocket to use that platform for their own ends.
This is a really punchy report from MPs, and they're calling for a regulator, a code of conduct that social media companies will face legal action if they don't stick to it. How easy is that? It sounds tough, but when you're operating with platforms that are global, how much can the UK do on its own?
Well, I think what we need to do is we need to hold these platforms responsible for the content that's on their platform. That is an incredibly difficult task because of the ease with which third parties can create shell companies to create essentially smoke and mirrors to deliver these advertising campaigns on the platforms. So it's very difficult for the regulators themselves to catch these malicious actors on the platforms, but more difficult even so for regulators to do so. So what we need to do is create a public body that encourages transparency over all types of political messaging that are delivered on those platforms, for those to be accessible in one single searchable place, so that all citizens have an understanding and idea about what has been approved and what is legitimate, authenticated political messaging. And I think once we have that starting point, we'll be able to start to more easily point out the bad actors and to take more urgent action to prevent disinformation from characterising our democracy.
How can users at the moment spot fake news? Because the problem with social media now is that anyone can be a journalist. And a lot of these articles or websites look very professional. They have professional photographs. They could be very well written. It can look very professional. So how can somebody spot fake news?
So the final suggestion of the report by the DCMS talks about digital literacy and engaging in a massive public programme to educate people about what fake news looks like. I personally believe that the fake bots and both on Facebook and Twitter are fairly easy to identify once you understand what it is you're looking for. But as
what should you be looking for?
Well, it's quite complicated. It's kind of easier to show you on a phone than it is to explain, which is exactly the point here, which is I can explain to you the types of different characteristics, different types of disinformation messaging. But if you're talking about being able to psychologically profile 25 different types of personalities and deliver 7 different types of stories, well, that's 155 different types of fake news you might be able to deliver. It's very difficult for me to explain to you one example of what that might look like. So we need public education where we can visualise and people can see what these fake news networks look like, what disinformation looks like.
Because that's the whole point of social media, is a very visual medium. It talks a lot about electoral laws and laws about outside interference in UK politics, for example. And the committee chairman, Damien Collins, said democracy is at risk from fake news on these platforms. Is it that serious?
Our democracy has been overrun by fake news. Brexit is a psyop. There is no control. So, for instance, Mainstream Network was a fake news network that was identified by the DCMS that was delivering micro-targeted political advertisements to leave voters in Remain constituencies asking for their local MPs to resign. When the DCMS questioned Facebook, who was behind Mainstream Network, who'd paid for the accounts, which currency they paid for those advertisements in, Facebook refused to answer. In that scenario, when we're talking about the inside of your mind, your own personal interest being leveraged to influence your political opinion, I don't know what you're seeing on your screens, but it's influencing the way that you think, it's influencing your interaction with politics. And when we look at Brexit and the political sphere and the way that people in this country have been polarised, it is due to this disinformation, entirely due to this disinformation.
OK, well, John, that is an impassioned plea for people to think about what they're reading on social media, particularly when it is news content. It may very well be fake. John Serpanis, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us here on Sky News this morning.